Ram, Rama Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Gaur Nitai, Jaya Gaur Nitai, Jaya Gaur Nitai. Jaya Nityananda Ram, Jaya Nityananda Ram, Jaya Eka Chakradam. Jaya Nityananda Ram, Jaya Nityananda Ram, Jaya Eka Chakradam. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol. Oh Hari Bol, हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल।
मधुर मधुर श्याम सुंदर। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Today morning during Japa, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Should I open my Zoom and go through that? Hare Krishna, I think we are not able to get sound to you. Is it? Am I audible? Can somebody confirm on chat? Can you open the chat, please? Okay, thank you. So in the morning, we had promised. Yes, Devankar. So in the morning, we had promised that we will be going live from the temple, and somehow there was some glitch, and we could not go live. And hopefully, all of you saw the beautiful Abhishek ceremony. It was very short, which we could see you, which we could show you here. It was a very wonderful ceremony, the Abhishek of Shri Shri Gaur Nitai. So I welcome you all for this session, Lord Nityananda, the embodiment of compassion. Today is Nityananda Trayodasi, the appearance day of Lord Nityananda. So we understand from scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, we understand that Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. And from Krishna comes the first expansion. And that first expansion is Balaram. He is the actual original Sankarshan, the source of Maha-Sankarshan from which the three Vishnus appear in the material world. The Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu and Shirodakshaya Vishnu. So all of them, they come from Sankarshan, Maha-Sankarshan, and Maha-Sankarshan originally comes from Balaram. He is an expanded form of Balaram. So Krishna and the immediate next expansion is Balaram. And we see that whenever Lord Krishna performs his pastimes, Balaram accompanies him in his pastimes. When Lord Ram performs his pastimes, we see that Lakshman accompanies. Similarly, when Lord Chaitanya performs his pastimes, Lord Chaitanya, non-different from Krishna, so when he performs his pastimes, we see that Lord Nityananda accompanies. So, Lord Nityananda is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His mood is very different. His mood is to serve Lord Chaitanya. That is his mood. So when Lakshmanji came, his mood was to serve Lord Ram. When Balaram came, his mood was also to serve Krishna. So Nityanand Prabhu would serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in different ways. Sometimes he would offer him advice as a spiritual master, as a guru, sometimes as a friend, sometimes as a servant. Similar to what would happen in Braj when Balramji would serve Krishna. Sometimes they will wrestle, sometimes Balramji will order Krishna, and sometimes when Krishna is very tired after playing a game, then Balramji will also massage Krishna's feet. So similarly, Lord Nityananda also, he is in the mood of a servant of Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Nityananda has unsurpassed beauty. He is very tall, strong. He has a very heroic stature. And he looks more attractive than millions of cupids. He has beauty. formed hands, arms and legs. His eyes are like lotus flowers, and he wears silk cloth and a silk turban on his head. He has golden earrings in his ears, golden armlets and bangles, and anklets also, tinkling anklets, and a beautiful flower garland around his neck. And his body is anointed with sandalwood pulp. And you will see in this picture that he always carries this red stick with him. The beautiful form of Lord Nityananda is always decorated nicely with tilak. So we apply tilaks on the body. So Lord Nityananda Prabhu also applies tilak on his body. His body is always manifested with beautiful tilak. And his movements are like that of an intoxicated mad elephant. Why? Because Lord Nityananda is always experiencing the ecstatic mood of love of God. So like that moves his whole body like a maddened elephant. So overall, Nityanand Prabhu looks more beautiful than millions and millions of moons. Sometimes we go to the beach in Chennai, and sometimes when it's Purnima, it's beautiful moon that comes out. And imagine if there are millions of moons, how beautiful it would be. So that is how the beauty of Lord Nityananda is. His teeth, the teeth are like pomegranate seeds, because he is chewing betel nut, and his body moves to and fro, right and left like this. So because he's constantly absorbed in ecstasy, remembering the Lord, serving the Lord, the words that come out of his mouth are Krishna, Krishna, Chaitanya, Chaitanya, in a very deep resonant voice, like the thundering clouds. So that's how the voice will come from Nityananda's mouth. And he has a very, very merciful nature, because he himself is full of love of God. And that's how he is an incarnation of mercy. So when we have a pot of honey, all that you can get from that pot is honey. Similarly, he is always so much absorbed in thoughts of the Lord that he distributes that mercy to all the fallen souls in this material world. And that is the reason why he does not distinguish between good and bad. Here we see this very famous pastime of Jagai Madai. And because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after completing his initial pastimes of childhood, he got into the mood of his accomplishing his mission. His mission was to save the fallen situation the people were in. They were not really aware of Krishna. They were not aware of Krishna Bhakti. They were more given to the Karma Kanda aspects of the Vedas, or they were not even worshipping Krishna, they were worshipping some Devi or Devata. So Lord Chaitanya had incarnated to save the people of the material world. And so he ordered that Nityananda and Haridas, you go out and you preach. So they were going door to door. So some people would welcome them. We heard about this pastime in Chaitanya Charitamrita classes. And somehow they came upon these drunken brothers, and they became violent, and one of them hit Nityananda Prabhu. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard that, he became very, very, very angry, and he rushed to that place and he invoked Sudarshan Chakra that I will kill them. How can they hurt you? And that's the time when Nityananda Prabhu stopped Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said that they are the right recipients of your mercy. So actually, Lord Nityananda is the embodiment and incarnation of mercy. If mercy incarnates, how will it look like? It will look like Lord Nityananda. So Lord Nityananda is Lord Balaram himself. Now, if you look at the word Balaram, Bala means strength. It just not refers to physical strength, it refers to the spiritual strength. And Balaram or Baladev is the source of that spiritual strength. So similarly, Lord Nityananda is also the source of spiritual strength. He is the one who is the original supreme, original spiritual master. He is the one who connects a fallen soul in the material world with the Supreme Lord. So he is the one who gives the strength to the disciples. So actually, Nityananda Trayodasi is the day when we pray to Lord Nityananda so that we can dedicate ourselves in the service of a spiritual master. So our spiritual master is actually a representative of Lord Nityananda. And so Lord Nityananda appeared in Ek Chakra Dham. It's those of you who have been to Mayapur, it's quite a distance from Mayapur. It's in a place where Ganga Ji does not flow. Ek Chakra Dham. He appeared in the year 1474. So it's more than 500 years back that he appeared there. He was born to Hadai Pandit and Padmavati Devi. So these are his parents' name. And they were very, very attached to this child. The child was so beautiful, and they had given their hearts and lives to this child. And not just Hadai Pandit and Padmavati, but all the residents of Ek Chakra village, they loved Nitai as much as their own child. So, and gradually as Nitai grew up, he had his own close friends. And what would they do? We see normally children play games, but Nitai and his friends, they would enact different pastimes of the Supreme Lord. The different incarnations are there. And they would perform different pastimes performed by those incarnations like Lord Krishna, Lord Ram. And all the adults of the village would be amazed with the kind of absorption which Nitai had. So when he would be performing those, those dramas or those leelas, when those children will get together to perform those, drama, it did not appear like drama. Because Nitai had so much, he was just completely into that pastime. He would express emotions as if he actually had experienced that pastime earlier. So much he was absorbed. And day after day after day, they performed different pastimes. And the pastimes were performed in great amount of detail. And they were performed with great skill and talent. So all the adults and the elders of the village, they would used to think, how is it possible for this child to know this pastime and know the pastime in so much of detail and perform it with such great amount of skill and talent? And nobody has explained to him these details before. How is it possible? Maybe he is one of the incarnations. So this is how the elders of the village would think about him. And then gradually Nitai grew up, and just before his 13th birthday, a traveling sannyasi came, and Hadai Pandit, usually the householders would invite such a traveling sannyasi to stay at home for some time, and they will serve him with all their best hospitality. They would cook nice meals and serve him. And so Hadai Pandit served this sannyasi with all that he had. And when the time came for him to leave, so Hadai Pandit asked him, please feel free to take anything. Whatever you like, please you take. My home is your home. So this sannyasi said, see, I'm a sannyasi. I lead a very, very simple life. My needs are also very, very minimum. And I'm going to a pilgrimage. So I think I require a traveling companion. So why don't you give me your son? And that was like a thunderbolt for Hadai Pandit. But he had offered this to a traveling sannyasi, so he did not want to go back on his words. With a heavy heart, Hadai Pandit offered his only son, and to this sannyasi. Nitai was very excited and he was very eager to travel. So this happened just before the 13th birthday of Nitai, and next 20 years he was on pilgrimage. They covered the length and breadth of this Indian subcontinent. So what actually happened is that all these holy places became sanctified. The entire subcontinent became purified by Lord's personal presence, because he traveled everywhere. 20 years they were traveling. And as a result, because Nitai was traveling to all these places, these holy places, so much bliss he was experiencing by traveling to these holy places, and he became that ecstasy. He was no longer. He did not no longer care about the material surroundings. He became completely aloof from them, and that is how he became that avadut. Lord Nityananda is often referred to as avadut, one who's completely disconnected from the material surroundings, and he is in his own ecstatic existence. So that stature Lord Nityananda manifested by traveling to all these holy places everywhere. And during the travel he reached Pandharpur. So there is an amazing temple of Lord Vitthal there. And there was this a highly elevated saint was there, Lakshmipati Tirth. He was there, and for some time he was getting dreams. Every day he was getting dreams of Balaram, intense dreams. And when Lakshmipati Tirtha, when he saw Nitai, immediately he made the connection. He was firmly convinced that this is Balaram. And they both bonded very well. They had very good devotional relationship. And then some authorities, they say that Lakshmipati Tirth initiated Lord Nityananda, and he gave him the name Swarup. So Nityananda Swarup. So we'll see that some places Lord Nityananda is also referred to as Nityananda Swarup. And the same sage, the same devotee, Lakshmipati Tirth, he had another famous disciple called Madhavendra Puri. Now, Madhavendra Puri was also his disciple. He's a very senior disciple. So, Nitai would often consider Madhavendra Puri also as his spiritual master. So, that is how Nityananda Prabhu accepted initiation. And they were traveling, and then Lord Nityananda reached Vrindavan. So we already saw that he was traveling the length and breadth of the subcontinent, and he was so blissful and so happy, and his heart was always filled with love for Krishna. And when he reached Vrindavan, the land, the actual land of Krishna, his ecstasy increased million times. So already he was avadut. He was already disconnected from whatever is going around him, and now that happiness and that love and that intensity of emotion, it increased 1 million times. Can you just imagine what is happening? So he visited many places connected to Lord Krishna's pastimes, and just out of that ecstasy, sometimes he shouted, sometimes he danced, sometimes he rolled in the mud, sometimes he laughed, sometimes he just howled like a madman. And he was just constantly, this question was coming out from his mouth. Where is Krishna? Where is my very life and soul? Where is he? Where is he? So that is what his situation became, more intense in Vrindavan. And that was the time when he had a very startling inner vision of Lord Chaitanya, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And why was this happening? Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by that time had also completed his childhood pastimes, and he was also getting ready for his preaching mission. So when he was getting ready, here Nityananda Prabhu got that inner vision, and then he traveled from Vrindavan and he joined Mahaprabhu. So what we need to understand is that Lord Nityananda holds the key to Mahaprabhu's heart. If anyone think that they can attain love of God without seeking the blessings and mercy of Lord Nityananda, that is hallucination. That is not possible. So after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas and he started spreading the Sankirtan movement and chanting the holy names of the Lord, we see how both Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, they moved to Jagannath Puri. So both of them, they moved to Jagannath Puri, and there Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left Nityananda Prabhu in Puri, and he proceeded for a tour of South India. So that he visited so many places in South India. It took almost 2 years. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned, he saw what happened in last 2 years, and he saw that how Nityanand Prabhu had developed a proper Gaudiya Vaishnava movement in Puri with the help of local devotees, and the devotees there, the congregation had developed, and so many people were engaged in Krishna bhakti in the proper mood and attitude. But because both the brothers had come to Puri, Navdeep got neglected. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this was in the year 1511. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called Nityananda Prabhu to a secluded place. Why? Because Nityananda Prabhu was his most reliable Sankirtan commander. So, to request him that you go to you go to Navdeep and you continue this process of preaching there, because Puri, yes, so much is happening, but Navdeep, both of us came here, nothing is happening. So you go there and you do this. So before we continue, we'll be discussing some of the pastimes of Nityanand Prabhu. Some of them are like, it may be difficult for us to understand. So before we go into that, let's understand what is the qualification to understand Nityanand Prabhu's pastimes. So we'll look at some verses. Shuna Vipra Mahadikari ye bahaya tabe tana dosha guna kichuna janmaya. So here, this is from Chaitanya Bhagavat. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is talking to one Brahmana. So this Brahmana, he accepted Lord Chaitanya in his heart as a supreme Lord. But when he saw Nityanand Prabhu, he was dressed in silk, he had so many ornaments, he would chew betel nuts, and he would, carry a stick which had gold endings. So he was just thinking that he is, sometimes people say Nityanand Prabhu is sannyasi, but he is like, appears like a materialist. How is it? He was getting very disturbed. So this Brahmana actually traveled to Jagannath Puri, and he found some private time with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he opened this question. How do I understand that? So here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began instructing this Brahmana. Listen, O Brahmana, when one is highly qualified, Maha-adhikari, when one is highly qualified, one is not affected by faults and virtues. Tabe tana dosha guna kichuna janmaya. So when one is situated at a highly elevated spiritual platform, then is not affected by material faults or material virtues. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives an example, he gives an analogy which we also see in Bhagavad Gita. Padma patre yena kabu nahi lage jala, ei mata Nityananda swarupa nirmala. Nityananda Swarup is pure, just as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. So like Nityanand Prabhu is, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives an example, like Nityanand Prabhu is like a lotus leaf, which while being in water, and even if we pour water, and even if it appears that the leaf has so much water, somehow water drops are there, still it does not stick to the lotus leaf. And that is the example which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives him to this Brahmana, that Nityanand Prabhu is pure. Even if he appears to be covered in silk and wearing ornaments and chewing betel nut and whatever, he is still not touched by those things. He is completely pure. And then he quotes one verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Na mai ekanta bhaktanam guna doshodbhava gunaha sadhu nam samachittanam buddhe paramupeyusham. Now what this verse talks about, this verse is talking about ekanta bhaktanam, na mai ekanta bhaktanam, material piety, sin, guna doshodbhava gunaha. Material piety and sin which arise from good and evil of this world cannot exist within my unalloyed devotees. So by performing sinful activity or by performing pious activity, we get some pious credits, some sinful reactions, but they cannot exist within my unalloyed devotees. Ekanta bhaktanam, my ekanta bhaktanam. If somebody is my pure devotee, then they are not affected by it. Who? We'll continue reading. Who, being free from material hankering, see the quality, he is free from material hankering. He does not have material desires. Maintains steady spiritual consciousness in all circumstances. Sadhu nam samachitta nam. So constantly he is situated in spiritual consciousness. And then this verse further says, indeed such devotees achieve me, the Supreme Lord, who am beyond anything that can be conceived material intelligence. So Krishna is saying, these pure devotees, one, they are not affected by pious or sinful activities, not by the reactions, and actually they come to me. So this is the greatness of great unalloyed devotees. And here, of course, Lord Nityananda Prabhu is Lord himself. He can perform any activity. He will not be affected by either Tamogun, Rajogun or Satogun. He is actually the master of the mode. So how can any of the activity in the material world affect him? But of course, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not give that reason. He was just saying that he is very pure and he is a pure devotee, and therefore he is not affected by all these things. And here this is a warning. Ete ke na gyani na ninde tana karma nija doshe se dukha paya janma janma. Therefore, a person without knowledge, if somebody is just not having proper understanding, therefore a person without knowledge who criticizes his activities, whose activities? Lord Nityananda's activities, suffer birth after birth because of his faults. So without understanding the true nature of Lord Nityananda, if somebody externally just sees his behavior and starts criticizing him, he is going to suffer birth after birth. Say dukkha paye janma janma. Birth after birth, he will obtain only misery. So let's look at what was Lord Nityananda's complete attachment. So actually, Lord Nityananda was completely sold out to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu. So Nityananda's love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, it is compared that his love and attachment was same as Lakshman had for Lord Ram. He had the same attachment for him. So that is how he was completely attached to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what was he doing? Let's see what was the activity of Lord Nityananda. Sadai japena nama Shri Krishna Chaitanya swapne o nahi ka nitya nanda mukhe anya. So Nityananda Prabhu, he constantly chanted the name Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Even in his dream, he would not speak anything else. In our case, when we sit and chant Hare Krishna, we may be chanting, we may not be listening. We may be thinking something else. This is our situation. And Nityananda Prabhu, even when he was sleeping or he was dreaming, he will not do anything else other than chant Lord Chaitanya's name. So this was his stature. So we understand that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had appeared in this material world for the upliftment of the fallen souls in Kali Yuga. We see so many, everything bad seems to increase, everything good seems to decrease. So that is the nature of this present age. And he has come to uplift people who have rejected the instructions of Krishna. So somehow to inspire them to take up those instructions of Krishna. And that is why Nityananda Prabhu is always glorifying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is doing such amazing service to humanity. Therefore, Nityananda Prabhu is always chanting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's name. So, as we are seeing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back from his South India trip, he was very happy that how Nityananda Prabhu has organized preaching in Puri Dham. And he was very sad that what will happen to Navadvip. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called Nityananda Prabhu to a solitary place and he said, "You are so magnanimous. Quickly go to Navadvip. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, see, I personally promised that all the fools and the fallen and the people who do not take up Krishna consciousness, who who are devoid of this love of God, who are not able to experience the bliss of devotional service to Krishna, I have promised that I will elevate them, I will inundate them. But so what happened, we will see that when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was preaching in Navadip, some people took up Krishna consciousness very easily, naturally they took up. But then there were certain people who were not interested, who would avoid, who would even criticize Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees. So they were both kind of devotees. So those who had taken up, great. But those who did not take, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's heart was going out for them. And he was saying that now I am in Puri, I am restricted to Puri, you go. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Nityananda, if you remain silent like a Muni and you renounce your magnanimous nature, then who will deliver these people? What is the hope for them to be elevated from this material life? What is the use of your incarnation in this world? So I want you to go and I want you to fulfill my promise. You go to Bengal without delay and you please start preaching them, and you please even people who are non-devotional, who are against the devotional principles, you please inspire them to take up devotional service. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives this instruction to Nityananda Prabhu, and what does Nityananda Prabhu do? Immediately he starts his travel to Bengal. So Nityananda Prabhu and all his associates, they said, yes, now we have received the order from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Nityananda Prabhu, as we saw, that he always considers himself as a humble servant of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he took this order on his head and he said, yes. So Nityananda Prabhu and his party associated Nityananda Prabhu, they began their journey for Bengal. So there were different devotees. The prominent members were Ramadas, there were one Gadadhar Das, Raghunath Vaidya, Krishnadas Pandit, Parmeshwari Das, and Purandar Das. And there were many other devotees, and all of them were traveling in this contingent, the Sankirtan warriors. So Nityananda Prabhu immediately left with these devotees. And first thing which he did, at the beginning of the journey, Nityananda Prabhu, first thing what he did was, he bestowed all the devotees traveling with him with ecstatic love of God. Our life would have been so easy if we were somehow fortunately part of that party. We some of us struggle to get up in the morning, some of us struggle to chant 16 rounds, and here, because they were all following the orders of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all of them were blessed with love of God. So that was the beginning of their journey. The beginning itself, they got ecstatic love of God. And so as I was talking about different devotees in this list, so there was this Ramadas. Now Ramadas, because he was blessed by this ecstatic love, he forgot the external world and he stood in the Tribhanga form, like Krishna stands. So remembering Krishna, he stood in that Tribhanga form, the way Krishna stands, for 9 hours. So this great ecstatic love was manifesting like this. Then there was this devotee Gadadhar Das. He became absorbed in this mood of Srimati Radharani, and he started calling out, who will buy yogurt? Who will buy yogurt? Like a gopi. He started doing that. Then there was this Purandar Pandit. He would what had happened is, by receiving that ecstatic love from Nityananda Prabhu, their bodies also became surcharged. So Purandar Pandit sometimes would climb up the tree and he will jump from the tree and he will say, I am Angad. Angad was assisting Lord Ram. So he would climb up and he will jump from there. Normally a person will he will break some bones, right? But he will say, I'm Angad. And then, so what had happened is that Nityananda Prabhu had aroused these devotees transcendental symptoms, their sentiments. So Nityananda Prabhu had, evoked their sentiments in their heart. So this whole party was traveling, and Sometimes they will cover 4 miles in half an hour. That's quite a good speed. Sometimes they'll cover 4 miles in half an hour. Sometimes they'll cover 8 miles also in half an hour. So sometimes they'll walk fast, sometimes they'll walk slow, sometimes very fast. Like this, they were walking, but somehow they were not knowing where to go left, where to go right, because all these devotees were, as we heard, ecstatically searcha. So they were doing kirtan and dance, and that's how they were moving. So after going for some time, they'll ask some people whom they will find on the road, "Oh brothers, tell us where is Ganga? Which is the way to Ganga?" Then people will say, "You have come the wrong path. You are 6 hours away from the proper path." So these people were saying like, "Alas, you have taken the wrong path," but they were still blissful. So after the hearing, they will turn towards the right path. They will again go, and in their ecstasy, they will dance and they will chant, and then again they will go in some other wrong direction. And then after that, they will ask somebody else, where is the route to Ganga? They will say, "Oh, you have come in a different direction, in wrong direction. Now you have to go back 20 miles." And these devotees will laugh, and then they will start. So how was this happening is that they were actually not even aware of their own bodies. So what to speak of the road? So they were just, I hope you can all understand, at least we can, begin to understand little bit the kind of ecstatic mood that this party was having, dancing and chanting, and they were not even aware of their bodies and even the urges of the body. So everyone, they did not feel hunger, they did not feel thirst. So neither they were thirsty, nor they were hungry, nor they were having any fear, nor they were distressed. So so imagine if the body is not giving us trouble and we are feeling so ecstatic and so happy and dancing and chanting, why would we want to stop? So like this, they were relishing the transcendental happiness, and they were moving, and gradually they reached Panihati. So this is a village on the bank of Ganga. So Nityananda Prabhu's party reaches Panihati, and so there was one very great devotee called Raghav Pandit. So Nityananda Prabhu went to his house and he stayed there with all his associates. So I think in this village he stayed around 3 months, and Nityananda Prabhu, he performed amazing pastimes here. He would constantly roar loudly in ecstasy. He was always overwhelmed with these symptoms of ecstatic love. He had lost his external consciousness. And whenever he felt a desire to dance, probably because we have never experienced such happiness, so we probably may be difficult for us to relate to it. So whenever Nityananda Prabhu had a desire to dance, immediately devotees will come, singers will come, and the musical instrument players will come. Immediately they will gather and they will start doing kirtan, and Nityananda Prabhu will dance and dance and dance. And he would dance in a way that the whole earth will shake under the weight of his feet. So it will shake. And he would chant the name of Hari, and he would roar loudly. And anybody who will see him, anybody who will hear him, anybody who will see his eyes, and on anyone on whom the glance of Nityananda Prabhu will fall, they will develop ecstatic symptoms. So this is how Nityananda Prabhu party reached Panihati, and because Nityananda Prabhu had received the instructions from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that you should deliver those who did not take up Krishna consciousness, you should deliver them. So this is how Nityananda Prabhu began his service. By his dancing, by his chanting, by his merciful glance on people, he began this task of delivering the entire world and giving them ecstatic love of God. So by doing this, by his personal example, he inspired people to understand that how they can completely surrender to Supreme Lord's service and how they can attain perfection. So we will see one thing, that the process of Nityananda Prabhu was only happiness. Kevala Ananda Kanda. Till now, whatever we heard, it is just bliss and happiness repeat. Bliss, happiness, and repeat. That's all what is there. So, when he was there in Panihati, one time, Nityanand Prabhu told his followers that you perform the Abhishek ceremony. So, Nityanand Prabhu sat on the deity throne, the throne meant for the deity. He sat there and he instructed the devotees for Abhishek. Thousands of pots filled with Ganga water were brought and they were mixed with amazingly scented oils. Natural scented oils were mixed in that water and then they were offered as an Abhishek to Lord Nityananda. So that water was poured on his head and everybody, hundreds and thousands of people were just chanting Hari Hari, Hari Hari, Hare Krishna, in all the four directions. So that is the only sound that was audible. And some of them chanted mantras and songs which are appropriate for Abhishek. So if you will see the Abhishek ceremony in ISKCON, also we chant Brahma Samhita, the 5th chapter, partially it is sung. And so like that mantras and songs were being sung. And all of the people who are witnessing this Abhishek ceremony of Nityanand Prabhu, their hairs were standing on end. And they were filled with great happiness. So, this is the way that Nityanand Prabhu was giving the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Just by observing and just by experiencing, people were, their disinclination towards devotional service was melted away. And they all became charged with spiritual strength. So the Abhishek got over and then Lord Nityanand Prabhu was offered new dress, new cloth and he was dressed and his body was smeared with sandalwood pulp. Nityanand Prabhu had a very broad chest. So that broad chest, they had put forest garlands, flower garlands, tulsi leaf garlands were put. And a very opulent throne was brought, with gold and other precious metals. So Nityanand Prabhu sat on that. And devotees began to chant and devotees began to dance. And there was so much of bliss and happiness with the devotees experienced in this Abhishek that they forgot themselves. And what Nityanand Prabhu was doing, he was so happy and blissful and he would look at people all around. And on whomever, as I said earlier, and whomever the glance of Nityanand Prabhu fell, they developed ecstatic love. So this dancing and singing was going on and in between Nityanand Prabhu asked Raghav Pandit, hey Raghav Pandit, do one thing, I really like Kadamba flowers. I'm very, very fond of Kadamba flowers. In fact, I live in Kadamba forest. So you go and you get me a Kadamba flower garland. So Raghav Pandit said, Prabhu, this is not the season for Kadamba flower. How can I give you a Kadamba garland? When it is not a season, I will not find the flowers. So usually the Kadamba flowers, they come in bloom just before the rainy season. So this time was not that. So there were no Kadamba flowers. So Lord Nityananda said, you go home and look carefully. Somewhere you will find them blooming. So Raghav Pandit said, okay. So Raghav Pandit went home and he was astonished. He was struck with wonder what he saw. He saw that in his house there was a lemon tree. There was a lime tree and in that lime tree Kadamba flowers had come. So, I mean this is all, the arrangement of the Lord. So the time was not correct for the blooming of, and it was not a Kadamba tree, it was lime tree from where the blossoming Kadamba flowers had manifested, and their color was wonderful, their fragrance was wonderful. In fact, it is described that how just by seeing these Kadamba flowers, the karma bandhan, the bondage of the karmas which is upon us is destroyed. Just by looking at those flowers. So Raghav Pandit was ecstatic in seeing those flowers. Then he gathered himself and then he got those flowers and made a garland and he came back to Nityananda Prabhu. So that garland was offered. And then during the same ceremony, suddenly everyone started smelling this Damanaka flower. They started smelling the amazing fragrance of Damanaka flower. And everyone's mind was enchanted. What is that fragrance? Where is it coming from? What is happening? Because they could not see the flower, but they could smell it. And it was spread everywhere. So Nityananda Prabhu smiled and he said, "Oh brothers, tell me, do you smell something?" And then all of them said, "Yes, Prabhu, we can smell. There is this wonderful smell of Damanaka flowers, and it's everywhere in all the four directions." And then Lord Nityananda Prabhu reveals how that fragrance is present here. So he said, because all of you are chanting, all of you are dancing, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had come from Neelachal to hear your kirtan, to see your dance, and his transcendental body was decorated with a divine garland of this Damanaka flower. And he stayed here for some time. He was leaning onto the tree and he was just watching you. And because he was wearing this garland, so that is how this divine fragrance has spread everywhere. So Nityananda Prabhu told, and therefore you should give up all other engagements and just absorb yourselves in constant glorification of the Lord. And the point that we want to see Krishna. Sometimes people go to Vrindavan and they try to see Krishna. Is he in the water? Is he behind the bush? Is he here? Is he there? Like this we cannot find Krishna. We have to act in a way that Krishna wants to see us. So here we see that these devotees were so much engaged in Krishna's glorification that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came from Neelachal to see them. So similarly, this was the message which Nityananda Prabhu gave them, that you give up all other engagement, just absorb yourself in constant devotional service of Lord Krishna. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself will come and will bless you. So Nityananda Prabhu was sitting on the throne and all his different devotees were just dancing and they were chanting. And as I was saying, because of this, their bodies became surcharged. They were not behaving like ordinary material bodies. So some people, someone just climbed on the top of the tree. In that ecstasy, it's like, so much. So it's just out of that ecstasy, they climbed the tree. One of them climbed the tree and he climbed onto a very tender branch. And from there he walked onto a tender leaf, and yet that person did not fall. Someone roared loudly in ecstatic love. Somebody jumped down from the tree. And so what had happened is that their bodies had become filled with the transformations. So, they could perform all these activities, which is humanly otherwise not possible. So, there were all these associates of Lord Nityananda, and there were so many of them, and because of the blessings of Lord Nityananda, they had developed abilities which was exceptional, like omniscient. So for a living entity like you and me, we cannot be omniscient. Omniscient means who are in knowledge of everything, who are aware of everything. So that is not possible for an ordinary living entity like you or me. This is a quality of the Supreme Lord. Omniscient, omnipotent, all-loving, so all-knowing. So this is the quality of the Lord. But the principal associates of Nityananda Prabhu, they became fully empowered. So they got this ability of omniscience, and amazingly, whatever they spoke, it came true. Whatever they spoke, it came true. And their bodies had changed. Their bodies became like that of the Cupid, which means their bodies became really beautiful, good-looking bodies. And these principal associates, they had various different kinds of potencies, and they began to manifest different, amazing, wonderful feats, which is not possible for ordinary living entities. So 3 months, Nityananda Prabhu's party stayed in Panihati for 3 months. Here, during their stay in Panihati, none of them, none of the associates of Nityananda Prabhu experienced any urge of the body. So like we read the nectar instruction, we have Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udara Pasta Vegam. So there are 6 types of urges which are described there, like the urge of the tongue, urge of the mind, the anger, the urge of the belly, the urge of the genitals, urge of the tongue to speak, right? Or to eat different things. So these are the different urges of the body. For 3 months, the associates of Nityananda Prabhu did not experience these material urges. In fact, this is recorded by Vrindavan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Bhagavat. For 3 months, they did not eat anything. So much dancing, so much chanting, they did not eat anything. So this, that's how they were completely empowered. And if any of those associates or servants desired something, then immediately he will receive it also. So it was completely phenomenal experience, actually, those 3 months. And then Nityananda Prabhu at one point in time desired ornaments. So, he just had a desire to decorate himself with some ornaments. And the moment he had that desire, various varieties of ornaments manifested themselves. And then when this news went out, then pious people who had faith in Lord Nityananda, they offered their obeisances and they gave variety of ornaments. Some gold ornaments, some silver ornaments, some with precious stones, some had diamonds, some had emeralds, some had corals, some offered fine silk cloth, some offered necklaces, with pearls. So different ornaments were served to Lord Nityananda, and some designs were made according to the desire of Lord Nityananda also. There are many different kinds of ornaments were brought for him. So he wore bracelets in his arms, armlets in his bracelets on his wrist, armlets on his arms. 10 fingers he had gold rings studded with different gems. In his neck there were varieties of necklaces of diamonds and pearls he wore, and his ears were beautifully decorated with earrings, and his lotus feet, he had ankle bells, and he was dressed in white, blue and yellow silk cloth, and he was looking stunning, wonderfully attractive. He was so and when he would smile, actually it would defeat the beauty of millions of moons. So, and of course Nityananda Prabhu was always chanting Lord Hari's name, so he was always smiling. So he became very attractive. And like that, when Nityananda Prabhu would move from village to village, with his party and with his devotees, all living entities became astonished on seeing Nityananda Prabhu. So even poor people, when they saw him, the amazing thing is, when poor people saw him, they did not become envious of him. When they saw him, they somehow found sweetness in looking at those ornaments, and they were inspired to render service to the Supreme Lord. So just by looking at all those ornaments also, it was assisting Nityananda Prabhu in preaching and assisting in the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we may think, Nityananda Prabhu is wearing so many, he has a desire for wearing ornaments. So that we already saw that how a highly elevated, spiritually elevated person, he is not contaminated by any pious or impious activity in the material world. And service of Nityananda Prabhu, it is so amazing. Whatever activity he will do in 24 hours, whether he was eating or he was sleeping or he was wandering about, he was going somewhere, he did not waste a single moment without Sankirtan. He was always accompanied, all his activities were accompanied with Hari Kirtan, always Hari Kirtan. Whether he was eating, he was sleeping, he was going, he was doing any activity, it was accompanied with chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And that is why Jiva Goswami, he has instructed all of us that there are many different kinds of devotional processes. including deity worship or any other activity that we do, any devotional service we do, it must be accompanied with chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So Nityananda Prabhu personally exhibited that. While doing any activity, constantly the chanting of the Hari Nam was happening. So there was this place, Ndiada. I don't this some I'm not able to understand the exact name. So there was this. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling. He reached this place, and this was also on the bank of Ganga, and he was performing different pastimes. He was always dancing and chanting, glorifying Krishna, and whichever village he went, that village and the people in that village, they became overwhelmed with the ecstatic love. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave instruction, you go and you preach, and you especially preach to the foolish and those who reject Krishna consciousness. And this is how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was infusing them, whether they want or they don't want. Nityananda Prabhu was infusing them with this ecstatic love, and it was so much that they were getting just so overwhelmed. So during his visit, one day he went to Gadadhar Das' house. He went there and he blessed so much of his blessings on him. So just one aspect of Gadadhar Das. So he was a very exalted Vaishnava, and in the same village there was a very, very sinful Qazi. So he was a Yavana, a very sinful Qazi. He was living in that village, and he was so envious. He would always threaten the Hindus that if you do anything, I'll put water on you, and then you will not be accepted in your Hindu Samaj. Hindu community will reject you. I'll put water on you. Like this, he will threaten, and he will, do that also. This Qazi very strongly opposed the Kirtan. He would very strongly oppose the performance of Kirtan. So what happened? One night, this Gadadhar Das, Gadadhar Mahashay, he went to that Qazi's house. And he went in the night. And night he goes there and he says, so Qazi is a very powerful personality. He will have soldiers, this, that. So he went there and called out, where is that fellow Qazi? Quickly chant the name of Krishna or I will cut your head. I will sever your head. Where is that fellow? If he will not chant, I will cut your head. And Gadadhar Das came in such a mood that it is not that Qazi did not have servants or others surrounding his house, but all of them were like, they were just so much taken aback. They had never experienced such a thing. And here this devotee comes and he's shouting like this. And Qazi became mad with anger. He was angry as fire. He came out of his room. But when he came out and he saw Gadadhar Das, and because Gadadhar Das had been bestowed with the mercy of Lord Nityananda, so when Qazi, burning like fire, when he came out and he saw Gadadhar Das, he became pacified. So Qazi said, Gadadhar, why are you here? So Gadadhar replied, see, I have to tell you something. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu have incarnated personally in this age so that somehow or other everybody can chant the holy names of Krishna. You are not chanting. You are the only one who's not chanting, and that's why I have come to your house in this night time so that I should chant, and then this name of Hari, if you chant, then you'll be delivered from all your sinful reactions. That is why I have come to your house. You should chant Lord Hari's name. You are the only one who is not chanting. So this Qazi, by nature, he was very envious. So we saw his history that he was very envious of all these Hindus and chanting of Lord Hari. Everything he was envious. But this Gadadhar Das, this devotee, was so empowered by the blessings of Nityananda Prabhu that this Qazi became stunned. And initially he could not say anything also. And then he gathered himself and then he smiled and he said, listen Gadadhar, you go home now you're very agitated. You go home now. I will chant Hari's name tomorrow. And Gadadhar became very ecstatic, very happy. I had come here to make you chant Lord Hari's name, and you chanted Hari's name. My job is done. Now you're relieved from all the inauspiciousness, because you chanted Hari's name. So this is how Lord Nityananda Prabhu will bless his devotees, and this is how his devotees will go, and they will so empowered that they will preach like this. And then Lord further traveled, and then he went to a place like called Khardaha. So in Khardaha there were, I'm sure there were many devotees, but Vrindavandas Thakur specifically talks about two devotees. He talks about Purandar Pandit. So by the association of Nityananda Prabhu, Purandar Pandit also became so intoxicated and ecstatic that sometimes he will climb a tree, sometimes he will roar like a lion. So much he was having that ecstatic emotions within him that this would externally manifest like this. And there was another devotee called Chaitanya Das. Now this devotee was, what he did were like, inexplicable. It cannot be explained. He did not display any external consciousness. Sometimes, there were forests, near the villages, there will be forest, and in those forests, sometimes there will be tigers. Sometimes he'll go in that forest and he'll chase those tigers. Sometimes he'll jump on the tiger's back. Sometimes he play with them. But by mercy of the Lord, mercy of Krishna, those tigers will not harm him. So they are not some trained tigers, they are jungle tigers. So sometimes he will do that. Sometimes, large python, he'll find somewhere and then he will place the python on his lap and he will play with it. So Chaitanya Das was doing all this. And sometimes he would go underwater. He will remain submerged in water for sometimes 24 hours. We go and we hold our breath. Some of you might have tried in swimming pool. How long can you hold your breath? Some maybe 1 minute, some 2 minutes. I think exceptional maybe 4, 5, 6 minutes. He would remain submerged in water for 24 hours. Sometimes 48 hours. Sometimes even for 3 days. He would just completely be submerged in water and he will not feel any bodily inconvenience. So what Chaitanya Das was doing, what he was doing 24 hours. I mean, these are his activities, yes, but what was he doing 24 hours? 24 hours means day and night. Most of us will sleep, hopefully if you're not already sleeping. So 24 hours he was chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. 24 hours either he was chanting or he was glorifying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, Lord Krishna. That is all he would do. 24 hours. So we saw Nityananda, he was how he had that ecstatic love for the Lord, and how we saw that he gave that to the devotees, and how the devotees became empowered with that ecstatic love. And we saw people who were even envious and who did not want to take it, by mercy of Lord Nityananda, even they became inspired to take up devotional service. So with that, we come to the end of this presentation. I hope all of you have developed some love, some appreciation, some attachment, some attraction, some ecstatic feeling for Nityananda Prabhu. So today is Nityananda Trayodasi. Please pray to him that may Lord Nityananda bless each one of us with such ecstatic love for the Supreme Lord. May he give us the determination, may he give us the sincerity, may he give us the seriousness to serve the instructions of the spiritual master. So with that prayer, I'd like to thank all of you for joining in today. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nityanand Prabhu ki jai, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Gaur.